Hey, it's Dr. Jaime, and let's talk about the importance of salt and electrolytes. If you're living the low carb life like me, your requirements are actually much higher. And there's only one source that we trust in our home, and it's the people and products at Redmond Real Salt. They keep us coming back for more every time. Real salt's an all natural, unrefined sea salt harvested from an ancient ocean. It's full of natural minerals that make it healthy, delicious, and pink or red looking. They're also the best selling brand in America's health and food stores. Redmond Real Salt is so pure, it's free of pollutants and microplastics found in many other natural refined salts. The Redmond Salt Deposit is in Redmond, Utah, where the team enjoys award-winning work conditions and generous pay. And since they own and control the whole process, you can be sure that Real Salt comes to you through their world-class production facilities in its unrefined, mineral-rich, delicious state, exactly as nature intended. Redmond has amazing natural products including salt, electrolytes, toothpaste, and so much more. So check out the entire line at www.redmond.life, where you can use my code DRFIT, that's DRFIT, for a discount on all Redmond Real Salt and Relight products. Welcome to the Fit and Fabulous podcast with Dr. Jaime Seaman. Hey everybody, it's Dr. Jaime and welcome back to the Fit and Fabulous podcast. You guys, today on the podcast, I have invited back a guest who's already been on the podcast one time, and this is such an important topic that I'm bringing her back a second time to talk about the topic again. We're going to talk about her new book. You guys need to help spread this message because there are millions of women and men who need to listen to this podcast. And you'll understand why by the time we get to the end. You guys, I invited my friend, Dr. Kelly Casperson, back to the podcast. She is a urologist. She's a wife. She's a mom. She's a sex educator, and she's a top international podcaster now, whose mission is to empower women to live their best love life. Kelly identified the need for better resources and developed a sex education class for women that covers topics like sexual health, intimacy, mind work, and the science of desire. She has combined her education, her humor, her candor in her podcast. That's honestly what people love about it and what I love about it. But her book right here is called You Are Not Broken. And she dismantles all the myths that women have learned over the years, including myself, you guys. I'm an OBGYN. And she normalizes healthy, enjoyable sex that is worth desiring. Dr. Casperson, welcome back to the Fit and Fabulous podcast.
Thank you for having me. I love it.
So she sent me her book, and I'm telling you, I got through the intro and I'm texting her. I told her I was slow clapping in my kitchen because I'm an obstetrician gynecologist. And there is this part in her intro where you talk about going to a meeting, the International Society basically for Sexual Health. She's trying to educate herself on this exact topic. And she meets an OBGYN there and she's like, well, why are you here? And she's like, because we don't get this education. So if you're sitting at home confused for any reason right now, it is not surprising to either of us. And so we're gonna dive in, but tell people a little bit of this story about how You Are Not Broken ever came to fruition.
Yeah, well, I mean, it came truly because I had a life-changing patient who was crying in my office and about low desire. And I was like, is it true? Like, you just like the doors open. You're like, is it true that we don't know? We don't have any answers? Is it true? Because I was taught in residency, again, urology is quite male focused, but we're pretty like open in talking about male sex, right? Like that's kind of like our niche. And they're like, women are complicated. We haven't figured them out yet. Like literally that's what I was told. And so I have this woman crying in my office and I'm like, is that true? Like, 8 years on. And I just started questioning it of like, no, we actually know a decent amount. It just is not getting out there. And like, the other thing, and you'll appreciate this, but like the academics and like what people learn with research does not permeate like the average person, right? Like to get it out and then to like go against what Hollywood's saying and your ex-boyfriend said and your religion said and like all this stuff. So it's like, we actually know a lot. It's just not getting out there. And so I had this voice in my head that was like, you've got to start talking. And that's where the podcast came from. And the book just came from the podcast, basically.
I don't understand why it is so uncomfortable for even professionals to talk about sex, intimacy, orgasms, masturbation, even amongst other OBGYNs, this is literally what we do. Like our livelihood hinges on people having
Yeah.
sex
If people don't have sex, you're out of a job.
and making a baby. And, when I got into the social media world, I've really tried to talk openly about sexual topics on my social media. I have 3 daughters, and that's been something, in my own personal experience, my husband and I, the first year we were trying to get pregnant, we had this really like deep conversation. I said, this is just really odd. It feels weird to have sex to actually, make a baby, because I felt like every previous encounter to that, there was always just this message playing in the back of my mind, like, don't get pregnant, don't get an STD. Like there was always this negative connotation with sexual experiences.
Mm-hmm.
And it really was hard for me to enjoy this moment where like we're really actually trying to like make a baby and make a new life. And it was a very thought-provoking idea for me. And I'm an OBGYN. So as I started to talk more about it, on social media, one thing I found was that we really equate, like I had a post where I talked about masturbation, and it was a very tasteful post, very educational, but I had a colleague that was like highly offended by it. Like the thought of even women in a swimsuit, there was this bikini MD
Yeah.
going around on social media.
Med bikini, hashtag med
We
bikini.
equate, women in a bra or whatever it is with unprofessionalism.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's just that. And that is one thing that I just really stand against, like I have 3 children. Clearly I've had sex at least 3 times in my life. And so I don't understand this stigma associated with being able to talk openly about it, even as urologists and OBGYNs.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think it's so multifaceted. Number one, if we don't talk about it, that's a way to control you, right? Keep you uneducated, keep you silenced. We're now controlling your behavior. Number two, I think, for women to, and I'm speaking about physicians specifically, but for us to like permeate and enter into this man's world, we did have to get rid of us being women, right? Like we had to be like them to fit in and not stand out and don't be different. And part of that's like, dress a certain way, blah, blah, blah. And realizing now where we're like, we're women, that's just us in a swimsuit. And you're calling that unprofessional. And what does that mean? Right. And that just for people, because if they're interested, like the Vascular Surgery Journal ended up retracting that paper because it was a bunch of men. I'm actually just writing like something up on this, so this is why it's fresh. But like it was a bunch of men scrolling without people's permission their social media and marking things unprofessional in a surgery in a bunch of surgeons. But it's like when you're told that you in a swimsuit is unprofessional and that you shouldn't even do that, separating your career from like you at the beach on a Saturday, right? It's a way of controlling your behavior. And I think there's a lot of that is like, we can't talk about sex, so we're going to control it.
Well, and it's not even sex. It's just like, I have patients that come into my office that, they don't know their own anatomy. Nobody in their family, we didn't talk about periods even. They definitely never had a conversation about self-pleasure and orgasm, and menopause. I mean, there's so many stages of women's life that women are afraid to even talk to other women about it. There's a part, even you kind of touched on it even in your intro. Can just tell people a little bit about the history of like urology and OBGYN and how like there really isn't like just the history. You kind of said, it's a man's world, and that's like some of it. But like, why are even us educators like so uninformed?
Yeah, well, medicine itself is very patriarchal, right? Like who taught the men, who taught those men the men. And women didn't come into this until late 1800s, right? But then, the fascinating thing is once you label something complicated, it's like a way of like waving your hand at it of like, well, now we can move on because that's complicated, right? It's like very much a way of dismissing it instead of like, why don't we have more research then? Why don't we figure this out more, right? But it's like, oh, and if you look at how many clitorises are represented properly in anatomic, drawings in medical school textbooks, and the penis has, multiple times, like pages and pages devoted to the penis, Whereas like very, very little is ever devoted to the clitoris. And I operate in the pelvis. Not once was I ever taught like when you put a sling in, it's going around the crus and the bulbs of the clitoris. Never once, right? Like discuss that. And so like it's just lack of education, and then that's just gets passed down because they didn't know either.
Yeah. Okay. So let's talk. The first part of your book is kind of explaining to women why they're not broken, the title of the book, and you kind of basically dive into why it's not their fault. So touch on some of those topics. Why do
Yeah.
women feel so broken?
Well, nobody talks about it, right? So you're the only one with the problem. And then it's shame. And then shame actually makes us, it silences us, right? Because we're like, well, there's something wrong with me. I better not talk about it. And I think, especially, the average doctor, again, sex is a normal body function, but we don't talk about it at all, right? So you might have been rejected once or twice by trying to bring it up in the doctor's office.
Mm.
And then you look at how society and especially how Hollywood portrays sex, right? It's spontaneous desire, it's mutual orgasm, about 2 minutes into a penis and vagina penetration. It's what the experts call a sexual script, right? So we're fed this sexual script, and once you pay attention, you'll see it in every single Hollywood encounter, right? And then you look at, top 10 country hits or rock and roll. It's all spontaneous desire. You can't keep your hands off this person. And then you're like, oh, but that's not actually how the brain works once we get used to somebody, right? And the getting used to somebody, or what they call like a long-term relationship, for the dopamine brain part is 6 months.
Mm.
And so here we are in our 13-year marriage, and we're like, why am I not just hot and heavy all the time? Everybody says that's how it's supposed to be. And you're like, well, it's not how neuroscience actually, how we function, right? But we don't get taught that. So we're just continually judging ourselves against this like sex ed that we're getting, which is inherently crappy and fear-based. Like you said before, don't get an infection, don't get pregnant.
Yeah. Yeah. So talk about just some of the, you have a chapter called Bad Sex Sucks. I mean, don't you have to have bad sex to have good sex?
Right? Well, I mean, it can be helpful because you can realize what you don't like, unless you keep just repeating what you don't like for the rest of your life and thinking you're the problem for not liking it, right? And I really got into this because I think by and large what I see on social media, what they say women go to the doctor the most about is a desire problem.
Mm-hmm.
And the lightning bolt hit me when I was talking to somebody, and they're like, and I'm like, well, are we just assuming women are having good sex and low desire? And they're like, well, yeah, well, like women are having good sex, they're just not desiring it. And I'm like, that's not the average lived experience. They're having shitty sex,
Mm-hmm.
and then they're beating themselves up for not desiring said shitty sex, right? So I'm like, we got to make sure, it's like the cart and the horse, but it's like, is sex even good? Because if it's not, don't beat yourself up for not liking it. And my big example is like Haagen-Dazs mint chip ice cream, which I freaking love, but like give it to me melted, I don't want it. I can't desire that. It's not good, right? Like it's you got to have sex worth desiring. And so many people are just, again, they're having Hollywood sex, not having a great time in the bedroom, or they're doing it for the other person. Right. Mm-hmm. I see so much of that, especially in long-term heterosexual relationships, right? You're doing it for somebody else, to fulfill somebody else's need or to make somebody else behave in a certain way. And then you feel bad because you don't desire it. And it really comes down to like, what are you making sex mean? And are you prioritizing your pleasure as equal in that partnership?
I have this patient in my clinic on a weekly basis. My libido has really gone down. And I always ask, is this a recent thing or has this been you forever? And a lot of women are like, oh no, it's really been like this forever, but maybe they had a baby recently, or things have changed. And then they say, well, I have sex with my husband because he needs it X times a week or whatever. And they want, a solution. Where's the imbalance in these sexual encounters? Like, talk to women right now who are listening about why they're really not having good sex.
Yeah. I mean, I think, again, it's so complicated. And that's why doctors, who know stuff.
For reasons they might not be. Yeah.
Yeah. I struggle in a 15-minute appointment, right? Because basically, and that's why the podcast is so good, because it's like, I can't undo society's like everything leading up. But in this scenario, she just had a baby. Maybe she's breastfeeding. She's got tons of prolactin in her body. She's got low estrogen. Her vulva's dry and painful. She's not producing lubrication. Her breasts are performing a job, so they're not sexual organs at this time, right? Her body is legitimately different than it was when she was 23 and, not having a baby to depend on. Your sleep sucks, by the way, when you have kids. We know that sleep deprived people have lower sex drives. We also know that cortisol and stress, these women who are like, go, 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 high powered career, get the job done. I got 3 kids. Oh, and now you want me to like just want sex? Like cortisol is horrible for desire. And then the other component of this person is the partner either demanding or requesting, or it's another thing she's giving to somebody else. And if she's got a new kid, she's already got a job, she's giving, giving, giving. Now sex is just a to-do list task. And it's really, I like to say, like, it's never actually about the sex, right? It's about the lack of communication. Like 10 times out of 10, she hasn't talked to her partner about this. She has not told him how she feels. She just feels like she's the deficient one. And that's like the weight I want to take off these women of like, you're not the broken one. You've got all this going on. Does he know? Right? And for a lot of men, sex means intimacy, closeness, love, right? And so he might want it for those things. And she doesn't know. She just thinks he needs, air quotes, needs sex. It's like he can masturbate to have a release if that's what he needs. He doesn't need her for that job. So it's wonderfully complex, and we don't get taught how to talk to our partner about this. Of like, honey, I've had no sleep. My breasts, they're doing a job. My vagina's dry. I love you so much. How can we spend some time together and connect, but not have it be another task for me to do? Because he might have no idea how she's feeling and how she's being burdened by this air quotes job of sex that she's trying to perform.
Don't you think
is that helpful?
Yeah, but it's not just lack of education for women. It's lack of education for male partners as well.
100%. Oh yeah. We assume that they got some sort of like secret education. Like, no. And they don't even have our body parts. He has no idea what happens when you breastfeed and get a low estrogen and a dry vagina, right? Or let alone just had a vaginal delivery.
Right.
So, like educating him of like, this is what happens to bodies. It doesn't mean she loves you less. It just means that right now is not how it was 5 years ago.
Yeah. So when a woman has a baby, for everybody listening, and you're breastfeeding, that suppresses your estrogen. It's suppressing ovulation, which is how it works some of the time for preventing another pregnancy. And when you suppress estrogen, the vaginal tissue needs estrogen for lubrication, for it to be healthy, essentially. And so when a woman is recently postpartum, I mean, her vagina has estrogen levels that are consistent with menopause. I mean, at that moment, her husband has more estrogen than she does most days. And so, there's a lack of desire, but also from a function standpoint, sex can be very painful. Nobody wants to participate in something that's painful. And also, I think that so many women think that libido and sex life is penis and vagina, right?
That's right.
They can still have orgasms, they can still have intimacy, they can still bond and connect with their partner. But I think that this is something that postpartum women, like their OBGYNs are not telling them. Like, I can't tell you how many women at a postpartum exam that I've told that to, and they're like, what? I didn't read that on my blogs or in my pregnancy book or.
Yeah. 9 times out of 10, you're going to get, nobody ever told me that. Right. Like people say, nobody ever told me that. And I think, that myth of like, it's your 6-week postpartum visit, you're good to go, clean bill of health. Right. And people are like, I don't really feel like I'm back to where I was at 6 weeks. And especially those breastfeeding women.
Yeah. Okay. So some of these women though say like, I have low desire, and I do it for my partner, but they're like, but to be honest, I could care less about really having it the rest of my life. Like, are there truly people who have an actual no to low desire?
Yeah. And I always, yes, is the short answer to that. The new, it's not that new, but Hsdd, hypoactive sexual desire disorder, is actually, a medical classified condition where not only do you have low desire for sex, but you're distressed by it, right? Because some people are like, yeah, no biggie, no big deal, it's fine. Like we're not trying to change them; they're happy. It's the people who, I have low desire and I'm distressed by it. I always think, it's the complexity of sex, biopsychosocial, right? There's biology, hands down. There's hormones and neurotransmitters. And then there's your relationship, and then there's society, right? And all of those things can affect a desire and low desire. And one of the chapters in my book is like, why are we even talking about desire, right? Again, it's a myth of like, you have to have desire before you can have great sex. It's like, go have great sex. Have it because you want it, have it because you love it. You're going to have to navigate that with your partner if you've just been having it for them for like 8 years, right? Really be like, I don't think this is doing as much for me as it is for you. I've been learning a lot about the female body. Could we try something else? Right? Like, it's really learning how to talk about it, because if she's having crappy sex, I can't fix her desire, right? It's melted ice cream we're trying to make her like. So there are 2 FDA approved medications for hypoactive sexual desire disorder in premenopausal women. Not all insurances cover it. They're expensive because they're new, but they work on neurotransmitters in the brain, right? Our dopamine, our serotonin, and those pathways of seeking out or being interested. The problem is we don't know who is going to benefit from these medications. They're pretty safe. They're really not that dangerous. You can try them. If they don't work after a couple of months, you can stop them. But I always say I don't prescribe on the first date. But it's like, if they don't understand the complexity of like, you've been having sex for him, you've been having penis and vagina sex, which we know women don't orgasm 70% of the time with that, right? So if she's trying to desire shitty sex, it's going to backfire. And I never want to put a woman on a med, have her fail the med. Now she's beating herself up because she's a med failure. Like, you've seen that, you know who these people are. So it's like, I try to be like, get your education first, read the books, listen to the podcast, figure out good sex before trying the meds. But for some women, they describe the meds as like helping the fog lift, right? Like, sex isn't so yuck to them anymore that they're actually like curious and like are thinking it out. Or they might some women start having sexual dreams and they're like, wow, that's cool. This is pretty awesome. Right? So for some people it works, just like antidepressants. We got to try them. They don't work in everybody, but they work really great in some people. We just don't know who.
Yeah, so there's 2 FDA approved meds. One's an oral med and one is an injectable.
Yep.
I would say clinically, I haven't seen anything magical amongst people. Okay, so let's talk about the orgasm, because I think a lot of patients, like you said, are having bad sex. I think they're having sexual encounters where they're not orgasming. So I think there's an orgasm gap in the relationship. That's kind of what I like to the way I teach patients about it. Talk about the difference between male and female anatomy, because teach people listening how women can achieve orgasm.
Yeah. So the orgasm gap is real. It's heavily researched. It's like trending in social media. And it's the heterosexual relationship is where we see the biggest gap. The heterosexual male is orgasming around 95% of the time with a sexual encounter. And the female is orgasming around 60%. Now, that gets worse with hookup sex. That 60% is in a long-term committed relationship where we think there's a little more attentiveness going on. If you look at college hookup sex, her rate of orgasm's 7%. So that's a whole nother big deal. But
7, like single digit, 7?
7 to 95. That is a massive gap, people. And the reason is we're prioritizing penis and vagina sex, going back to that definition of sexual scripts, right? Like, we don't really get taught about pleasure. Heaven forbid we teach people proper sex ed. I remember my sex ed as for the female anatomy. I remember seeing an ovaries and the uterus. Like, that was what I don't know if you got different. I did not get taught that the clitoris is the organ of pleasure and women like to have sex when it's pleasurable for them.
No, so even in my pre-med track, I mean, to be honest, I don't think I really learned about clitoral anatomy until my first year of med school. I mean, there was an entire lecture on orgasm and the part of the brain where, this happens or whatever. But yeah, definitely not like as a young girl.
Yeah,
they
totally.
told me I was going to have a period, but that was about it.
So the penis and the clitoris are the 2 homologous structures, right? Embryologically, we all start the same, and then based upon our genetics and the connections, we either turn into something with a penis or something with a vagina and a clitoris in most cases. But Dr. Rachel Rubin, who's this amazing friend urologist, she's like, putting a penis in the vagina is kind of like rubbing a man's scrotum. Like, it's close, but he's probably not going to have an orgasm from rubbing his scrotum, right? It's like putting something in a woman's vagina. It's close, but she's likely not to have an orgasm. 30% of women will have an orgasm by putting something in their vagina, usually because there's also clitoral stimulation going on. So the clitoris, you'll see the tip of the iceberg above the urethra, in the vulva, all these different words. None of these words is vagina, right? We call everything down there vagina, but we really have these outer structures called the vulva. The clitoris is at the top. And then clitoris is like a wishbone. It kind of hugs around the inner part of the vagina, underneath the labia. And we have erectile tissue, just like penises have erectile tissue. Same parts, just rearranged differently, right? And that erectile tissue needs blood flow and stimulation. And that helps protect us, right, from trauma, helps lubricate us. So my, joke for women is like, if you're not at an 8, don't penetrate. The vagina actually lengthens and tips back with arousal to accommodate a penis. And so many heterosexual couples just start sex by putting something in the vagina.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of that reason is like we like to rush sex in our culture. Like it's better to get it done fast or have an orgasm faster, which when you think about it, it's kind of ridiculous because do we rush anything else pleasurable in life? Not really. Like I really need to get through this vacation faster.
I wish the Super Bowl
pleasurable
would be 2 minutes.
Yeah, because it's pleasurable. Like it's really silly when you think about it. Like why are we rushing through like what's inherently supposed to just be pleasurable? But starting with her outside working in, like getting her body warmed up, starting with like back or breasts or brain or massage and working down, because just touching those body parts cold can actually be more of a turn off for her. Her body's not ready. It's like putting in a tampon, right? Like putting in a tampon is not inherently sexual. So if you don't tell the brain, I'm going to do some sexy time, I want you to get turned on. I want to get it. Your brain's like, oh, tampon, thing in the vagina, whatever. And that's where you'll hear those women be like, I'm so disengaged, right? Like something's happening down there, but I'm not really into it. Is like getting tuned in and getting blood flow. Just like the penis. It's hard to give an unerect penis an orgasm. It can be done, but like they need stimulation and blood flow and things like that. So we're really the same body parts organized in different ways. But what we get taught is that when the penis goes in the vagina, that's the start of sex. We call everything else foreplay. And then when he has an orgasm, sex is over. And if she had an orgasm in any of that, it was like a bonus, right? But it's so people, the experts really say, talk about expanding your sexual script. We do the same thing over and over and over again. And then we end up just not liking it. And then we think we're broken for not liking that thing.
I think there's so many women who've never even looked at their own vulva. I mean, I will sometimes find patients that have taken a mirror or taken their phone or whatever and taken a picture because they want to see what it looks like. So I would encourage anybody listening, if you don't understand your own anatomy, what your anatomy looks like, look at it, touch it, feel it, figure out by yourself, like what, because you can't ever communicate that to a partner if you don't know what feels good and what doesn't.
That's right. And I think,
sometimes that's hard to explore with somebody.
Yeah.
And
we put so much pressure on the men, right? Like they don't have this anatomy, they can't practice. And then like we put the responsibility of like, he gave me an orgasm or he can't give me an orgasm of like, did you explain how you work to him? Right? And it's okay to try and fail. Like try, fail. It's okay. Again, Rachel Rubin, she's like, nobody's so good at sex that you can't get better at it.
Interesting. So if in, heterosexual couple, low desire, if people are kind of exploring this, you'd kind of made a statement like when a male orgasms like encounter is done, is it more advantageous for women to orgasm first? Is this something they should, explore to come at the same time? Is it like, have they looked at that before?
Yeah. I mean, this is just me kind of doing my research and like what I've figured out. Some people, and again, in sex, it's tough because we stereotype all the time, but some people will say like when the man has an orgasm, his brain's like food, Super Bowl, like, he might really, after that orgasm, not be interested anymore. Again, stereotyping, that might not be the case. But if that's you, make sure she gets her pleasure first, right? Because then everybody's still kind of geared up and interested in the exercise that you're doing. So I always think she should have an orgasm first, right? Prioritize it. But again, we don't want to pressure it. As soon as we pressure ourselves or our partners to have an orgasm, there's that cortisol, there's that frontal lobe. It makes orgasms less achievable. So it's prioritize, but don't pressure or coerce somebody to have an orgasm.
Interesting. You talk in your book about the brake and the accelerator. Let's talk about like above the belt now. Ways that women can achieve more desire that's above the belt.
Yeah, absolutely. I think a big one, stepping like 10,000 feet back, is like, what do you desire in your life? Right? And some people are like, oh, I don't know. Right? Like,
It's a big
really
philosophical
like, yeah,
question.
like, are you actually desiring anything right now? Right? And how did society tell women, like, don't want anything too much, don't be too competitive, don't be too athletic, don't get too high in, like, really society has told us, like, don't dream big, don't have too much desires, don't want too much, because then you're probably a bad name, right? So I think just socially, like, have we ever been told as a woman, like, it's actually okay to desire sex? I would argue no, because what do we call women who desire sex? We call them bad names. So here we are in a long-term relationship, not desiring sex, and you're like, well, no kidding. You were never allowed to desire sex in the first place, right? So looking at what do you desire, making sure you have sex worth desiring, and looking at, how we say desire needs to come first. And I usually say, like, forget about it. Go have great sex. Don't think one more minute about whether your sex drive is good enough or not. The other interesting thing about sex drive, Freud actually kind of popularized the idea that it was this like drive, is that it's really not a drive, not like hunger and sleep and thirst, right? So hunger and sleep and thirst, the less you have it, the more you need it, the more you crave it, you need to get it or you die. The less you have sex and pleasurable sex, the less you actually want it. So all these women who are like, yeah, I haven't had it in a while and I really don't want it, like, normal, totally normal. You actually have to get back in the game to start. And the more good sex you have, the more you're like, that's super fun. Let's have some more. Let's try something new. But the less sex you have, the less you actually desire it. Totally normal, because sex is not an inherent drive in humans. Now, our species needs to do it to reproduce and continue, but an individual will not die. And another thing so many people do is they wait till the very end of their day. They've given everything. They're exhausted. Now they have to have sex. And then they go to sleep. And it's like, you're competing with sleep. Like, that's a hard ask on, like, enjoying sex, having it take the time it needs to not rush through it. So many women are like, well, it's just easier if I just lay there and he has an orgasm. And it's like, well, pay attention to the role you're contributing in you not prioritizing sex in your life, right? And I love linking up exercise and eating right and sex. Is like, are you sitting around, Jaime, waiting for spontaneous desire to exercise and eat right every single day? Most athletes
I don't feel like working out every day.
No, not at all. But when you work out, or you're like, I like doing this, and when you're done, you're like, that's pretty great, right? And so that's how sex works too. But we think like we just should be sitting around spontaneously desiring vegetables and cardio. Like, no. But it's part of the lifestyle I want and how I want to be in this world as a sexually active person with my spouse. So we're gonna block time for it. We're gonna prioritize it. And people always ask, like, but what about the dishes in the sink? And I'm like, okay, if you've literally created your life where the dishes in the sink are more important than your sex life, realize that you created that. Right? And people are like, and I'm like, it's that black and white thinking. Like, are you worried if you leave the dishes in the sink one day, your whole house is just going to like fall apart? Like, no, leave the dishes in the sink sometimes. But it's this like to-do list, checklist, cortisol driven life. And we don't separate and prioritize our sex life. What you prioritize grows.
Yeah. Okay. Let's talk about another taboo subject, sex toys. It's been interesting to bring up this conversation, even in my own circles, because we've had friends or couples that are like, oh my God, we don't do that. My husband doesn't want that in the bedroom. So for people listening, what role could that play in having more orgasms or better sex, or are there cons to it?
No. Next question. No, somebody said sex toys and lube are to sex what heat and salt is to food. I'm like, well, you can eat food, but like if you cook it and salt it, they're like, yeah, this is way better, right? We're like, well, I'd hate to like offend the food by salting it. But I mean, the point is, like, some people will say like, it's like technology, right? There's so many arguments that are good to just, but once people are like, well, it's technology. It's not natural. It's not how men and women were designed to have sex, right? Because it didn't exist. And I'm like, I'm freaking 43 and I have a water pick and an electric toothbrush. I have like 2 technologies just for my teeth, right? Let alone how we move around this planet in these freaking cars, right? Like, so it's like, I can quickly dispel, like, we use technology in our day every day to make our lives better. This is just another arena. And number 2, if we truly want to prioritize her pleasure as equal to his pleasure, which I truly believe is the goal, we need to pay attention to what helps her have an orgasm. And we don't really care how it's going to happen, right? We know the clitoris and the vulva love vibration. That's why vibrators exist. Like, vibration to those nerves and those body structures is amazing. So it's like, it's just technology that helps get you there faster. And the other thing with lube is the clitoris is not self-lubricating and the penis is not self-lubricating. Like, really dispelling this myth that, like, you air quotes shouldn't have to use lube, of like, it's just salt and heat to food. It just helps. Like, you can work out, but like working out with shoes is quite nice.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
well,
Or if people, are having, I'm specifically thinking about my perimenopausal, postpartum, and menopausal women. The vagina has lubrication, but in some medical situations, you can have lack of lubrication. And if you don't, and it's painful, it's not going to be an activity that you want to participate in.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's definitely a time for sure to use lubricants.
Yeah. And, people are like, well, I have low desire and pain with sex. It's like, no. You just have pain with sex. Like, nobody desires painful sex. We got to address that first. Absolutely.
What are good lubricants and are there bad ones?
I don't like ones that have like tastes and smells and colors and heats, just because I think a lot of people have sensitive skin, especially if you're getting into the perimenopause, postmenopause, your skin might get more sensitive because of the low estrogen. I love silicone because it's great for dry skin. It doesn't just get absorbed. That skin just wants moisture so badly, right? So silicone will stick around longer. Be careful with oil-based if you're a condom user. Right. I think the water ones, they're just tacky. I don't like the way they feel. That's why I like silicone. But most lubes are pretty cheap. You could try. Again, people are like, they're like, I need the right one. And it's like, well, buy the wrong one. You'll realize if you like it or not. You'll see what you like,
Yeah.
And I think it goes into like they don't want to fail. But it's like, if you ask a woman, what kind of sex do you want to have? Most times she can't answer that. She hasn't been given the time or the opportunity to like figure out what kind of sex she wants. But if you ask a woman, what kind of sex do you not want? She's pretty decent at answering that, right? Like, where I just lay there and he does his thing and then we roll over and there's no foreplay and I don't have an orgasm. Like, she's pretty good at telling you what she doesn't want. And I'm like, okay, reverse engineer that then. Do the opposite. That might be the sex you want.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's like you don't know what kind of car you want to drive until you test drive a couple cars,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally.
Dipping your toes in the water. Let's talk about masturbation, self-stimulation, such a taboo topic for women. I've even had a mom who brought a young girl in and she's like, she's touching herself. Like, can we talk about at what age in a girl's development, like, is this normal to start exploring this?
Yeah, it's actually normal very, very early. So, toddlers, 3 and 4-year-olds will learn that it feels good. Right. It's only when we label that behavior as bad do they start getting shame for it. So these body parts are meant to give us pleasure. Kids figure out very early, hey, it just feels good, right? Now you can have a discussion with these kids and be like, it's okay to touch yourself, but you do it in your bedroom with the door closed, and we don't do it in public, and we don't do it around other people. So give them a space to do it because they're probably figuring it out already. And then where we look at all of us adults and we're like, why do we have all this shame? Why do we have such a problem looking at our vulvas? And it's like how we educate our young ones, the future generations, in being like, these are normal body parts that feel good. Let's call them by their proper names. And let's say that feeling good is okay. Because I think that very easily goes into the other good part of sex ed, which our generation never got, which is consent, right? You're like, why do all these women have sex when they don't want it? Why do all these women have sex just for their spouse? And I'm like, do you realize we got 0 sex ed on consent? 0.
Tell people what that means.
What consent means?
Yeah.
So consent is I wholeheartedly am interested in having this experience with you. because I want to. And people will say, if it's not a hell yes, then it's not a consent. And people also say, like, no means no. No doesn't mean until you convince me yes, right? Of like, when a woman says, no, I don't want to have sex, it doesn't mean she doesn't love you. And it doesn't mean she might not say yes tomorrow. It means tonight she's not interested. And being able to have that agency of like, I can tell you no, and it doesn't mean anything about our relationship. It doesn't mean I reject you wholeheartedly. It just means tonight I don't want to be penetrated. I need my own space. I need my own autonomy. And a woman that has her own sexual agency is going to be so much more into that hell yes because she's allowed to say no. And I think so many women, they think it's just part of the marriage contract, like in sickness and in health. And yeah, because I promised to have sex with you 4 times a week. Of like, that was never written anywhere. And we just assume it, and we just make sex be this baggage that we end up not liking.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's such a like dynamic tango in, you know, heterosexual couples. I mean, maybe even homosexual couples, but I've just never experienced that. But like my husband, if I come home and he's like folded my laundry, and like there are things that are like, oh yeah, like, okay, now I'm into this, where I wasn't, there, I just think there's so much like nuance to like situations. But I love that you say that like women a lot of times feel guilty for saying no. Like, well, I would say the majority of the time they feel guilty for saying no, because that's what they say, in my clinic.
And I think going back to the laundry of like the brakes and the accelerators is like, he's figuring out, whether you guys talked about it or not, he's figuring out what takes off your brakes and what pushes your accelerators, right? Like if I do yoga, like after work and after the kids go to bed, my husband's like, oh, you went and did yoga. Like he kind of knows like yoga for me is a way to like get rid of the cortisol, get into my body, and that I might be a lot more willing. Yeah. But so many couples don't talk like, what's your ideal leading up to like good sex, right? Because so many people just assume like light switch, have sex now. And it's like, it's not how our brains work. It's not how cortisol works.
Yeah. And it's like, it's two-sided, take your partner on a date, carve some time out of the calendar. I mean, my husband knows if he folds my laundry, there's a good chance I'm going to be like in that mindset. You made me think of something when you said the yoga though. I put this out on my social media. When I am like sweaty and disgusting, my husband would like to take me in the house and rip my clothes off. Where I'm like, can I shower? It's interesting sometimes. What's a turn on for one person
totally
isn't necessarily for the other.
To me, like when I've had like a great meal and I'm like comfortably full, like I'm like that to me, I'm like, it's a total turn on for me. And my husband's like, no, I just ate, I'm full. And it's like, we never talk to each other about like, hey, what really works for you? What really doesn't? We just think or assume, everybody should act like us or have the same desire as us. And I think where women and men, they get tricky is like thinking that the woman needs to meet his needs. Like, no. We got 2 separate people living in a house, right? Like you might want to work out 6 times a week. He might want to work out 2, right? Is it his job to work out 6 times with you because he's married? No. But it's like without basic sex education, women get into this trap of like, well, he needs to have sex 4 times a week. And it's like, yeah, but you don't. He can masturbate and he can learn how to navigate and exist in this house. And if he gets grumpy and if he gets anxious and if he gets moody, that's him behaving as an emotional child, using sex as a way to control his emotion. And that is not an adult behavior, and it is not okay. But it's like women, we have to start saying this because women are just using sex as a way to like, air quotes, keep him happy instead of having like, we're not good at talking about sex. Like I wasn't good at I'm good now because this is what I do. But it's like, it's awkward and it's clunky. But if you want to set up yourself for a good sex life into the years, you've got to talk about it. What are the brakes? What are the accelerators? What's a turn on? How do you not want to be propositioned for sex, right? Women are like, he just comes and grabs my ass and I hate it. And it's like, did you tell him you hate it? Well, no, because it might make him. And it's like, yeah, but he needs to know what your boundaries are and what turns you off, right? That's just 2 adults navigating. And I think there's so many assumptions when we don't talk about sex.
Interesting. Circling back to the sex toys for a minute, there was somebody on my social media that asked one time about the use of vibrators, clitoral stimulation, that these things might actually damage them in some way or hurt their ability to orgasm down the road. Is there any truth to that, or is that a myth?
No, that's a myth. They've done a lot of research on this. It's people are like, well, can you get, it's a joke, but people are like, can you get addicted to your vibrator? Or I think I'm addicted to my vibrator. Your body might like orgasming in a way that feels a certain way and happens in a certain frame time, right? And that might be with the vibrator. Doesn't mean you're addicted to it. Doesn't mean you've damaged your nerves. It just might take longer using like hands or a penis or whatever else. But there's nothing wrong with it. And I think, again, it's worth exploring. And I'm encouraging people to have like uncomfortable conversations. But it's really like, you're not going to change what's going on in the bedroom if you don't. You've got two people here that we're navigating. But like, why is his ego hurt if you're using a vibrator? Right?
That's come up too. Yeah. My husband won't allow it because I might have orgasms by myself and then not want to be with him.
Right. Super interesting, right? Like if you look at it, because it's not us like looking at that of like, wow, he's really trying to control the way she has pleasure. He's really trying to control her sexual body. And is that right? And is that what she wants? Right. But talking about it of like, what is he making the vibrator mean? That's a very interesting conversation. Because the vibrator's neutral, right? If you go into like coaching on this, the vibrator's a neutral thing. Some people are like, bring it on. We have 5. I hate it when you forget to recharge them. Like, which one do you want to use tonight? Right? That's one couple. And the other couple's like, it hurts my ego. It means you don't love me. It means I'm not good enough. It means you'll never need just me. Right? And you're like, the vibrator's neutral because you got 2 very different circumstances there. So the vibrator itself isn't inherently bad. It's what's going on in that relationship.
So interesting.
And to me, Texas at one point, it was illegal to own more than 3 vibrators.
Really?
Or 1. Yeah, it was 3 or 1. They've now increased it to 5. Because if you have like more than 5, then you're like a sex store or something like that. Like this is actually legislated in some states. So I'm like, you should at least have 1 more than like the Texas legal limit.
Wow.
because screw you, Texas, for even like making a law.
Wow, that's fascinating.
I know.
Wonder who's enforcing that. They raid your house and
count your
find 6 in the bedroom bedroom table.
Like, why did that have to be a law? Who are we trying to control, right?
Oh my gosh. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about menopause and problems that occur just in menopausal women.
Yeah. The big one is GSM, or genital urinary syndrome of menopause. So basically what that means is the pelvis developed into the pelvis with a clitoris and a vulva, aka the female pelvis, because of estrogen. Those tissues go through a decline when the estrogen goes away. So what we see is decreased blood flow that can affect arousal and stimulation, decreased collagen, so decreased elasticity, more bleeding with penetration or dryness with arousal. So all those things is GSM. It used to be called vulvovaginal atrophy, which atrophy was kind of like, we don't call erectile dysfunction like penis failure, right? So we try to make it because genital urinary syndrome of menopause explains this happens to the bladder and the urethra and the vulva with menopause. Now, what I see, you probably see this too, is women are so poorly educated as to AKA what menopause is, what happens with it, and that it's progressive, right? So they don't know that. Nobody ever told them. They just stopped having sex 7 years ago because it hurt. They didn't know why. They didn't know how to solve that, right? So I'm trying to like move the needle of like, when it hurts, see somebody, because it's so treatable. And I talk about skincare, like the vulva and the vagina needing estrogen is just skincare. Because we know women spend billions of dollars on this 1 foot square of their face on skincare. It's like, we love skincare. Let's take care of the vulva and the vagina. So,
but it's even deeper than just the skincare. I mean, when it gets dry and it hurts, and then they stop having any sort of penetration, the vagina starts narrowing, the pelvic floor starts weakening more. So, talk to people about the safety of vaginal estrogen, because I have so many women that I suggest vaginal estrogen. even breast cancer patients. And I'm like, and they're like, no, my Aunt Sally used that. She got breast cancer. I'm like, no, we're talking vaginal, not systemic. And they still are terrified of
Yeah.
vaginal estrogen.
Same here. It's getting better, but same here. I think the problem is estrogen is called estrogen. And like, I'm like, this vaginal cream needs a rebranding just so people like dissociate estrogen and cancer, which we know estrogen does not cause cancer if we want to get into that, and systemic. But a year's worth of vaginal estrogen is equivalent to taking one pill of hormone replacement therapy estrogen, which is still on the order of 10 times less than one pill of birth control. So now we know that vaginal estrogen is incredibly low dose. And sometimes just saying low dose vaginal estrogen helps people get over it. The second problem is the FDA requires the same labeling on every single thing that's called estrogen. So if you take that woman, you've now convinced her it's safe, you give her a prescription, she goes home and reads the fine print, it says this will basically kill you. And so I try to get on top of that. And I'm like, listen, if you're a reader of the pamphlet, it'll say it's going to cause all these things. There's no data to support that. And then the ACOG, American College of Obstetrics and Gynecologists, has a nice position paper on vaginal estrogen for post-breast cancer patients and even breast cancer patients. I always get their okay from their oncologist. But it's incredibly safe. It's just the stigma of the word estrogen. Basically what we did is we taught women that something their body naturally makes tries to kill them. We've made them very fearful of that. And so here we are. But now they, and again, it's that natural thing of like, it's not natural.
But meanwhile, their partner is on testosterone replacement therapy and using Viagra and Cialis.
Yeah. I mean, that's the gift of being a urologist, is I see how we treat the men. We treat the men very different than how we treat the women. When a man has low testosterone, we're not like, I know, honey, it's just what happens with age. Like, try some acupuncture. We do not treat men the same way that we treat women. Right? Like, would you
rub
like
some jade crystals on your penis?
Yeah. Would you like to try this placebo instead of this FDA approved product that your insurance covers? Okay. Like, we do not treat people the same. And so that's why it's so easy for me to be like, just treat everybody equally, which means you're going to give the women the hormones and they're going to take them just like the men do. And the other thing is the men take the Viagra. We don't tell them it's not natural. Right? It's like the number one best-selling drug in the entire world. We don't natural all over them. And who are they supposed to sleep with?
Yeah.
If they're heterosexual, we need to take care of the women.
So back to the insurance coverage issue, because gosh, I run into this all the time. And I'm sure there's somebody listening that's like, yeah, my doctor wanted me to do it. And it was like $90 a month. And I literally had a woman say, like, spending that is not worth the sex that we have one time a month. Like, she's like, that's like paying $90 every time we have sex. Okay. So there's creams, gels, capsules, pills, vaginal rings. There's even DHEA, testosterone. There's lots of other treatments that could help, but tell people your tips and tricks of where they could find it cheaply, because, or even there's probably a doctor that's listening that wants to know this too.
Number one is Cost Plus Drugs, which is Mark Cuban's new generic place. So here's the new thing about 2022, which people need to know this. Your insurance is not always the lowest price for drugs anymore. That's how it used to be. That's not how it is anymore. So Cost Plus Drugs is cash based. Your doctor puts in a prescription to it and you get, it's very cheap, tabs and cream. The other thing people can use is GoodRx. So I did this. Like, this is my own personal experience. I got some vaginal estrogen cream, went to my local pharmacy. They said that's $260 with your insurance. And I said, well, let's not use my insurance. Here's my GoodRx coupon. It was $26. But the horrible thing is you have to be like smart and savvy and know that your insurance wants you to pay more than what you can actually get it for cash for. And the price of vaginal estrogen cream has come down significantly in the last 2 years. I used to tell people to use like a pea size, a teeny amount, and I was underdosing them. They'd come back in 6 months, they'd have the same problem. And now I really do that 1 gram 2 to 3 times a week because I can get it so cheap. But oftentimes you can't go through your insurance. It's way more complicated than it should be.
What about the vaginal moisturizers? I've had some patients come to me and they're on and some of them I'm not even familiar with. They're like, I got this whatever XYZ product off my Facebook feed.
Yeah, totally. I mean, there's so many. The good thing is we're starting to care right, about women's issues. So that's nice. The ones with hyaluronic acid are quite nice. That's hyaluronic acid is used in, high-end face skincare products because it's moisture locking, it holds it in. I always tell women that you can use both. Use vaginal estrogen and the moisturizers. The moisturizers kind of work as a band-aid. They make it feel better. It's a little more moist, but it doesn't change it from like the outside in. It's not preserving your labia minora. It's not preserving your clitoral sensation. It's not doing what estrogen can do. So I never talk about them as if they're equivalent. But for most of them, as long as you're not like sensitive to it and it doesn't get itchy and issues, like find what you like, and it's just skincare.
What do you think about some of the like CO2 lasers, radio frequency, or the O shot?
Yeah. They're all different, first of all, but the laser I think can work because it really does basically forces the body to kind of bring in blood flow, bring in collagen, and kind of heal this fake wound that we're giving it. I think it can help. It's expensive because insurance doesn't cover it, but for some women, it does really kickstart their healing. If I have women who are like pain with sex, my trifecta can be like vaginal estrogen, physical therapy, and a laser. Just I want to see her get better as fast as possible. She might be a good candidate for it. The O shot is usually platelet-rich plasma,
PRP.
PRP around the clitoris, around the urethra. It's very expensive. I shudder when people say this gives people desire. Remember, desire is created in the brain. Desire is how we think or go after something. You can't inject your clitoris and your vulva and expect desire. Now, placebo is an amazing thing in sex med studies, right? But if you're paying $3,000 for this AKA desire, so I don't love that. I think there's not a lot of studies, and I think manipulating women don't know anything about sex. Now you're selling a product, especially when it's sold for desire or to.
Yeah, I'm broken. I'll just write you this check for $2,000. You inject your magical stem cells into my vagina, and it is going to fix my problems.
Yep. So to me, it's a big no. A lot of people who are doing that aren't truly sex med doctors, right? And won't kind of do the biopsychosocial. How's the relationship? How's the sex you're having? Are you paying attention to the clitoris? Are you using a vibrator? Right? No, just give me $3,000. I'll inject this. And guess who sees them after it fails? Me. So like, of course, I see all the failures of like, I'd spend your money on other things. You can get like 20 vibrators for 3,000, maybe 30 vibrators.
Not in Texas. You'll be arrested.
But not in Texas, my friends.
I'm gonna have to look up the Nebraska law. Okay, so tell people, Dr. Casperson, how to find this book, You're Not Broken, how they work with you, find you on socials.
Yeah, thank you. So the book's on Amazon. We've got ebook, paperback, hardcover, and I just recorded the audiobook like last week, so it's probably come out in a couple months. I love Instagram, so I'm Kelly Casperson MD on Instagram, and I'm a baby on TikTok, but I'm there. Podcast is You Are Not Broken, and if you go to kellycaspersonmd.com, you'll actually see my group membership where we do coaching. I have tons of lectures and things about desire and arousal and desire mismatch and all these things about our body. Basically, the adult sex ed that we never got.
I love that. I love that. Okay, you guys, go check out Dr. Casperson, check out her coaching group if you feel like you need, more hand-holding in this journey, because you're not broken, you're not alone. And as she has discovered, the more you start talking about it, people start coming out of the woodwork, and thank you for being so brave and talking about it so openly, because I know it's a very vulnerable space. As I found out, it's not unprofessional in any way. It's literally what we do for a living. And as a mom of 3 girls, it really means a lot to me. So thank you for the work that you're doing.
Thanks for having me.
All right, everybody. Hey, share this podcast, follow your friends, leave us your reviews, leave us your questions. Maybe we'll have to have Dr. Casperson on for a 3-peat sometime. Thanks, Kelly. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.